A moment out of time in a place made holy by our presence. To celebrate what is deepest and most true. To honor the beauty of our own heart's longing. To cultivate wonder, imagination, and the courage to act. And to care for one another. Please light your chalice. Our common chalice is now lit.
Come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving, ours is no caravan of despair. Come yet again, come. Come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving, ours is no caravan of disbelieving, ours is no yet again of despair. Come yet again, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving, ours is no caravan, whoever is leaving, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving, ours is no caravan of despair. Come yet again, lover of leaving, ours is no caravan, whoever is leaving, ours is no caravan, whoever is leaving, ours is no caravan of leaving, ours is no caravan of despair. Come yet again, come.
Welcome to this special All Souls Day worship service where we really take time to honor our ancestors, those who have died, those who are still with us in our hearts, but no longer on this planet. It's always a special week and a sad one and a happy one to remember, to hold those memories dear and to acknowledge how much the dead are still with us. You know, I'm more than 10 years now without my mom, and still it can feel like yesterday. So just want to acknowledge this will be an emotional time for many of us. I want to say that always there are people going who we want to grab, we want to pull them back, we want to force them to stay on the planet with us, and that is not the way of life. Right now I'm thinking about Michaela Dodgens, a member of the CLF prison ministry who was beaten and then died. She was a transgender woman living in a men's Ohio prison. And it's important to keep her with us. It's important not to let the person who beat her have the final word or the prison system have the final word, but to remember her life, her love of music, her love of humor. We also, here in the Unitarian Universalist wider community, are in deep grief as one so beloved to many, many of us. Our former moderator, Denise Davidoff, Denny, to all of us. I've known Denny for decades. She and I have done so many amazing things together, and she is and was and forever will be a true force of nature. No room was ever boring with Denny in it. And I'm sure you'll be seeing in the weeks and months to follow many, many people who need to tell our stories, who have funny anecdotes, who have poignant and justice-centered things to share about Denny Davidoff. She is in hospice now and in many, many people's prayers. We send out our love, especially to her closest ones, to her family, to the friends who have been right in the center of this. And with that, I say, it's always happening, new births and deaths. It's the cycle of life that we live in. And so as we hold the moment that is ours to hold, come, let us worship together.
Let us now pause for a moment of deepening together as a community, for we each carry within us joys that are too great for one heart to hold, sorrows that are too much for one heart to endure, local and world events which call upon us to bear witness. Let us begin by recalling the joys, whatever you may be celebrating or whatever evokes a feeling of happiness or peace for you or for others. Now let us recall our concerns and sorrows, whatever you or the world may be holding that is in need of our healing and caring thoughts. In the heart of love and in the spirit of prayer, we give thanks for this time together, where joys can be magnified and sorrows can be lessened. Blessed be.
Please join me now in a time of prayer, meditation, time of setting everything aside, putting your hands down from your keyboard, closing your eyes if you'd like, sitting or lying in a very relaxed position where you feel yourself held by the chair or the bed or the couch, wherever you are, where you allow yourself to be held in the heart of love. We live in eternity. We live in time, we live in deadlines, we live in places and times to show up, and we also live in the timeless. This time of year is a time when the veils between the living and the dead are said to be thinnest, and I invite you now to lay down all of the deadlines, all of the stresses, all of the times you're supposed to be keeping, and simply sink into this very moment. Inhabit this moment as the moment, the center of all moments, the time when you are alive. And into this time, into this moment, I encourage you to invite all of those on the other side of the veil whose love and support you draw from, who made you the person you are today, whether you knew them intimately, read them in a book, heard about them from a friend, learned about them from family members now living, people who support you from the other side. I invite you to allow them to hold you just as you are held by the couch or the chair or the bed where you are now. Imagine yourself in the arms of these ancestors. I invite you to feel them with you now, to feel the presence of those no longer on this planet, perhaps to feel the presence of those not yet on this planet, to allow yourself to rest in eternity, in the moment we inhabit now, understanding that this moment dwells in the moments beyond and the moments before. May we all be held in the heart of love.
We've come to a very special season of the year. It's the time of All Saints' Day, All Souls' Day, of Halloween, also known as Samhain, of El Día de los Muertos, the Day of the Dead. It's a time that ancient tradition describes as being the time of the year when the veil that separates the world of the living and the dead is at its thinnest, when we are in closest proximity with those who have died. It's a time that here in the US, and I suspect in much of Western society, we don't really deal with very well. Rather than Samhain traditions of greeting the ancestors, we dress up as sexy nurses and go door to door or have parties. And somehow the depth gets left behind. We don't necessarily want to deal with that crucial, absolute bedrock reality of life, which is that it ends. It ends. My life, your life, the lives of everyone we know, they all end. And so the temptation is to push that aside and to hope for the best and to rely on medical technology to save us and to keep at bay that great reality. All lives will end. So much has already been lost. So much will be lost. But there are traditions that go the other way, that acknowledge that reality and even find ways to celebrate, to find joy in the connections that we still have with those who are no longer alive. The Mexican holiday of the Day of the Dead, El Día de los Muertos, is one of those holidays. And the Canadian writer Margaret Atwood says of that holiday in relationship to our Western avoidance of the topic of death. In Mexico, they do this festival the right way, with no disguises. Bright candy skulls, family picnics on graves, a plate set for each individual guest, a candle for the soul. Everyone goes away happy, including the dead. We've rejected that easy flow between dimensions. We want the dead unmentionable. We refuse to name them. We refuse to feed them. Our dead, as a result, are thinner, grayer, harder to hear, and hungrier. Our dead are thinner, grayer, harder to hear, and hungrier. And you know what? So are we. So are we all when we engage in the denial of the reality of death, when we try to push it all away and pretend that it doesn't happen. At least it doesn't happen to us. And I've been thinking about that kind of denial because it seems very apropos of a different kind of denial which seems rampant in our society, the denial of climate change. It seems to me that there is an undercurrent of grief, of fear, that runs through so much of society at the moment that can be traced to our unwillingness to grapple with the fact that our earth, our whole, our being entire is so threatened, that so much is changing that we don't know what to do. And so, in addition to the actual denial of scientific evidence, people go deeper into denial, deeper inside into pushing things away, and I think it's part of what fuels a tone of divisiveness and hostility and, well, defensiveness, because people are defended against themselves as well as defended against each other, because so much effort goes into not feeling and not seeing and not knowing what is so threatening. And when we're faced with drought and floods, with hurricanes and fires, it becomes even harder to push that away. And so we try still harder to not know. But I wonder what would happen if we let it all in. The grief of knowing that we and our loved ones will die. The grief of knowing that our planet isn't dying, but is changing in ways that are profound and scary and threatening. What if, as with the Day of the Dead, we managed to mourn, to let ourselves be torn by grief, to think of so much that is being lost, from Amazon forests to coral reefs, and to feel the depth of that sadness, the depth of that loss, as with the loss of a dear relative, a close friend. And what if we were able to walk into that grief far enough to celebrate, to have a picnic, to have candy replicas of the creatures we are losing, to pause in remembrance of the beauty that is still all around us, to cherish and love and adore and mourn all that is threatened, all that we're losing, all that we have already lost. We live, each of us, in a complex ecosystem. As the African poet Birago Diop says, the dead are not under the earth. The web of life that contains us contains those who are no longer alive. It contains the interdependent web of all creatures, all beings, all of our networks of connection, of meaning, of love. It's all present. And we can become present to it in our grief, in our despair, and our hope, in our commitments, and even in our joy that we belong, each and every one, all of us, in this complex, multi-generational, infinite web of living and dying and living.
Stand still, beautiful land, for a moment, and say your last words in silence. I bow to you. And hold up my lamp to light you on your
I have lost many people now in my life, and I know because I've been through it so many times, friends, loved ones, my brother, my husband, my parents, that I know with each time that we are all going to have this moment. It's part of the human package. It's part of the privilege of being human, is that we have our moment when we have to say goodbye. And it's nothing personal. It just, we all have to pass through it. And I've just learned that all of these people that we lose, and this is what I mean by experience, they're all within us. They become part of our DNA. They become part of our blood. And, you know, sometimes I still am scolded by my mother. 70 years old, my mother's been gone since 2001, and she's still scolding me, or she's still helping me. She's still counseling me. I still talk with Robert about art, about the future, my husband, about our children, and I feel them within me. You know, I'll be walking along and just all of a sudden have such a warm feeling of my father with me or my brother. And so if we keep open, if we keep ourselves open, they will come. And the Italian filmmaker Pasolini said, "It isn't that the dead don't speak, it's just that we forget how to listen."
And now we come to that time in our service when we extinguish the flames that we've lit for this special time set apart. But never do we extinguish the flame that burns eternal, the flame of love, the flame of our commitment to a just and caring world. If you carry that flame, please touch your heart and say to yourself, "I carry the flame," and allow that flame to burn bright.
This little
And now we come to that time in our service when we extinguish the flames that we've lit for this special time set apart. But never do we extinguish the flame that burns eternal, the flame of love, the flame of our commitment to a just and caring world. If you carry that flame, please touch your heart and say to yourself, "I carry the flame," and allow that flame to burn bright.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine.